I thought it was just silence, until her hand stayed in mine, city lights breathing outside, love returned quietly, deeper, irreversible. She wasn't my girlfriend anymore, she was home, and the night sealed it, forever changed. If you like this story, love, then press like button and tell in comments where from you watching this love story. For more emotional and romantic love stories, press subscribe button, watch till end, thanks. The night didn't knock before arriving. It simply existed, calm, steady, almost intentional. The street outside my apartment was unusually still, the streetlights glowing like they were holding their breath. No rain, no wind, no rush. Just the hum of the city settling into itself, like it knew something fragile was about to happen. I was standing near the door when she knocked. That sound, soft, hesitant, landed somewhere deeper than my ears. I opened the door, and there she was. Familiar. Beautiful. Slightly tired. Her eyes met mine, and something inside me shifted, quietly but unmistakably, like a painting being tilted just enough to reveal a hidden detail. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I replied, though my voice didn't sound like my own. She stepped inside, brushing past me, and the scent of her, something warm, something known, stayed in the air long after she had moved. I closed the door behind her, and the click of the lock felt heavier than it should have. Final, almost. We didn't rush to speak. She took off her coat slowly, folding it with care, like she was buying time. I watched her hands, the way they moved with a quiet confidence, and wondered why I suddenly felt like I was seeing her for the first time. We sat on the couch, close enough to feel each other's presence, far enough to pretend we weren't aware of it. The silence between us wasn't empty, it was full. Comfortable. Dangerous. The city murmured outside the window, distant cars passing like reminders that the world was still moving, even if we weren't. I noticed the way the light touched her face, softening her features. She noticed the way I leaned forward when she spoke, like I didn't want to miss a single word. We talked about small things at first. Work. Exhaustion. A funny moment she had earlier that day. I laughed at the right places, but my attention was elsewhere, on the pauses between her sentences, on the way her voice dipped when she mentioned things she didn't want to think about. Every word carried something unsaid. She glanced at me when she thought I wasn't watching, her eyes searching, measuring. I pretended not to notice, though my chest tightened every time our gazes collided. When I said her name, my voice softened without permission, and she noticed. I saw it in the slight lift of her eyebrows, the almost smile she tried to hide. Time stopped behaving normally. Minutes stretched, folded in on themselves, becoming something fragile and rare. The clock on the wall ticked, but it felt distant, irrelevant, like it belonged to another room, another life. At one point, she stood and walked toward the window. I followed with my eyes. The city lights reflected in the glass, wrapping around her silhouette like a second skin. She rested her hand against the window, and I wondered what she was thinking, if she felt the same quiet pull I did, if this night was pressing against her heart the way it was pressing against mine. "I like nights like this," she said softly. "When everything slows down." "Me too," I replied, though what I meant was I like you like this. Unguarded. Present. She turned back to me, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. No smiles. No jokes. Just recognition. Something passed between us then, something honest and terrifying. I had loved her before. I was sure of that. But sitting there, in that stillness, I realized love didn't always announce itself with fireworks or chaos. Sometimes it waited patiently. Sometimes it disguised itself as peace. She came closer, sitting beside me again, this time just a little nearer. Our knees touched. Neither of us moved away. The contact was small, accidental looking, but it sent a quiet shock through me. I felt my breath change, deepen. She felt it too, I could tell by the way her shoulders lifted slightly, the way she inhaled as if bracing herself. We talked more, but the words became softer, slower. The space between sentences grew longer. She told me about a dream she had once abandoned. I told her about a regret I rarely shared. Each confession peeled something back, layer by layer. I wanted to reach for her. I didn't. Distance existed, but it was thinning. She picked up a photograph from the table, a random one, old, slightly faded. She studied it, tracing the edge with her thumb. "You keep everything," she said, smiling faintly. "I'm afraid of forgetting," I admitted. She looked at me then, really looked at me. "You won't forget this," she said, gesturing between us, though she didn't name what this was. I nodded, even though a part of me feared she was wrong. Or worse, afraid she was right. The night deepened. The lights outside grew softer, dimmer. Shadows stretched across the room, settling into corners like silent witnesses. I became acutely aware of her breathing, the way it matched mine when neither of us was paying attention. Somewhere between shared smiles and unfinished sentences, I felt myself leaning closer, not with my body, but with my heart. It was a surrender I hadn't planned, hadn't defended against. She reached for her bag, pulling out a folded piece of paper. A letter. Old. Creased. She hesitated before opening it, then stopped. "Not tonight," she said, more to herself than to me. That pause lingered. A symbol of something unresolved. Something waiting. We didn't touch, not fully. Not yet. But the absence of touch was its own kind of intimacy, charged and intentional. The space between us felt like a question neither of us was ready to answer. When she finally stood to leave, my chest tightened unexpectedly. I hadn't realized how deeply the night had wrapped itself around me. At the door, she turned back. "Tonight felt different," she said. I nodded. "Yeah. It did." She smiled, soft and uncertain, then stepped out into the quiet street. The door closed behind her, and the silence rushed back in, but it wasn't the same. The room still held her presence. The couch remembered her weight. The air remembered her breath. This night wasn't just something that happened. It was something that began. And as I stood there, alone, I knew whatever was unfolding between us had only just started. The room hadn't changed, but something between us had. The same couch. The same dim light. The same quiet city breathing beyond the window. Yet the air felt heavier now, thick with awareness, like the moment before rain finally falls. Her hand rested on the sofa between us. Not reaching. Not withdrawing. Just there. Close enough that I could feel its warmth without touching it. Far enough that it felt like a question I was afraid to answer. I noticed it immediately. Of course I did. My eyes traced the line of her fingers, relaxed but not careless. I told myself not to stare, not to make it obvious. When I finally looked up at her face, she wasn't looking at me, she was looking forward, pretending nothing had changed. But everything had. The city outside flickered in reflection against the window, light and shadow moving like memories we hadn't sorted yet. I could hear her breathing now, slow but deeper than before. Mine had changed too. I wondered if she noticed. I shifted slightly, my arm brushing closer to her hand. Not touching. Not yet. My heart beat louder in my chest, irrationally loud, as if it were trying to warn me or push me forward. I couldn't tell which. She didn't move her hand away. That was the permission I didn't know I was waiting for. My fingers reached for hers slowly, deliberately, like I was approaching something fragile. I let the back of my hand graze her fingers first, barely there. A test. A breath held between us. She inhaled sharply. I turned my hand, letting my fingers slide into hers. The contact was soft, tentative, almost reverent. I expected hesitation. Resistance. Something. Instead, her fingers curled around mine. She held on. That single movement unraveled something in me. Months of unsaid words, unfinished conversations, nights spent pretending I was fine, all of it collapsed into that quiet, steady grip. It felt like an answer to a question I had been too afraid to ask. Warmth traveled through me, slow and certain, spreading from my hand into my chest. Not fire. Not urgency. Something deeper. Something that settled instead of burned. She leaned closer, her shoulder brushing mine. The contact sent a shiver through me, and this time I didn't pretend it was accidental. Her head rested lightly against my shoulder, tentative at first, as if she were giving me time to pull away. I didn't. Her weight felt right there, like it belonged. Her breathing evened out, and without realizing it, I matched it. Inhale. Exhale. Together. The lamp beside us cast a soft glow across the room, painting everything in golden shadow. On the wall across from us hung a half-finished painting, something abstract I'd never quite completed. She glanced at it, then back at our hands. "You never finished that," she said quietly. "I didn't know how," I replied. She smiled faintly. "Some things don't need to be finished. Just understood." Her words lingered. So did the way she tightened her grip on my hand, just a little, like she was afraid this moment might slip away if she didn't hold it firmly enough. I turned toward her, lifting my free hand. My fingers hesitated near her hair, hovering, asking again without words. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes meeting mine, open and unguarded. I brushed her hair back gently, my knuckles grazing her temple. Her eyes fluttered closed for a second, and I felt something inside me give way. I kissed her forehead. The kiss was slow, lingering, placed with care, as if I were sealing a promise I hadn't spoken yet. My lips stayed there longer than necessary, longer than polite, because leaving felt impossible. She exhaled, a soft sound that felt like relief. When she looked up at me, her eyes were glossy, not with tears, but with something close. Something fragile. "I like this," she whispered. "When it's quiet." "So do I," I said, meaning everything. I leaned in, slowly enough that she could stop me. She didn't. Our lips met gently, without urgency, without hunger. Just intention. Just presence. The kiss wasn't about desire, it was about recognition. About choosing this moment, this person, without needing to explain why. Her lips were warm. Familiar. Safe. She smiled against my mouth, barely pulling away. "I feel safe," she whispered. Those words hit harder than any confession. I pulled her closer, resting my forehead against hers. Our hands remained intertwined, anchoring us, reminding us this was real. Outside, a distant car passed, tires hissing against the road, a reminder that time was still moving even if we weren't. We sat there like that for a long moment, suspended between what we had been and what we were becoming. No promises spoken. No futures planned. Just two people choosing not to let go. Eventually, she glanced toward her bag again, the same one she had reached for earlier. Inside it, I knew, was something unresolved. A letter. A past. Something waiting. She didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she squeezed my hand once more, grounding herself. Grounding me. And in that quiet, glowing space between us, I understood something with terrifying clarity. This wasn't just love growing. This was love choosing to stay. And I didn't know yet what that choice would cost us, but I knew I was no longer willing to walk away. Night deepened quietly, like it didn't want to interrupt us. The city outside dimmed further, lights blurring into soft reflections on the glass. Somewhere far away, a siren passed and disappeared, reminding me that the world still existed beyond this room, but it felt distant, unimportant. She hadn't moved away from me. Her head still rested against my shoulder, her hands still locked in mine, fingers warm and certain. But something had shifted. The intimacy was no longer new, it was heavier now, layered with meaning. With consequences. I felt it in the way she exhaled slowly, like she was steadying herself. I felt it in my chest, where warmth had begun to ache. "I almost didn't come tonight," she said suddenly. Her voice was calm, but the words landed sharp. I turned my head slightly, enough to look at her. "Why?" She hesitated. Her thumb traced a slow circle over my knuckle, a nervous habit I recognized instantly. She did that when she was choosing her words carefully, when the truth scared her. "Because I knew," she said. "If I came, something would change." I swallowed. "And you still came?" She nodded. "Yeah." Silence returned, but it wasn't empty. It was full of the things we were circling, afraid to touch directly. I thought about all the nights before this one, the messages unsent, the conversations cut short, the way we always stopped just before honesty became unavoidable. I had told myself I was protecting us. Now I wasn't sure who I had really been protecting. She shifted slightly, lifting her head from my shoulder to face me fully. The distance between us was small, but deliberate. Close enough to feel each other's breath. Far enough to step back if we needed to. "I don't want to pretend anymore," she said softly. My heart tightened. "Pretend what?" "That this is just comfort. That this is temporary." She gestured between us. "Because it doesn't feel temporary to me." Her words cracked something open inside my chest. I looked away briefly, toward the painting on the wall, the unfinished one. It suddenly felt like a mirror. So much intention. So much hesitation. "I'm scared," I admitted. The words surprised me with how easily they came. "Not of you. Of myself." She waited. She always did. That was one of the things that made this harder. "I've loved you for a long time," I continued. "But loving you like this, it feels like crossing a line I can't uncross." She smiled sadly. "I crossed it a while ago." That confession hung between us, fragile and exposed. I felt regret then, not for being here, not for holding her, but for every moment before this when I had chosen silence over honesty. She reached into her bag again. This time, she pulled the letter out. It was old, I could tell by the way the paper had softened, the edges worn. She held it between us like an offering, or a warning. "I wrote this months ago," she said. "On a night when I thought I was finally ready to let you go." My breath caught. "Did you?" She shook her head slowly. "No. I just learned how to live with missing you." She didn't open the letter. She didn't need to. The weight of it was enough. It represented every feeling she had folded away, every truth she had chosen not to speak. She placed it on the table beside us, carefully, like it mattered. "I don't want to live like that anymore," she said. "I don't want to keep choosing the safe version of us." I looked at her then, really looked. At the vulnerability in her eyes. At the courage it took to say that out loud. At the risk she was taking by staying. I reached for her face, cupping her cheek gently. She leaned into my palm instinctively, her eyes closing for just a moment. The intimacy of that small gesture felt overwhelming. "I'm afraid I'll hurt you," I said. "Not because I don't care. Because I care too much." She opened her eyes. "I'm already hurt," she said gently. "I just don't want to be hurt alone." That broke me. I pulled her into me, wrapping my arms around her, holding her tighter than before. She melted against my chest, her arms sliding around my waist, her fingers gripping the back of my shirt like she needed proof that I was real. We stayed like that for a long time, breathing each other in, hearts beating unevenly. I felt the ache of regret settle deeper, not regret for this moment, but for all the moments we had wasted pretending we didn't feel this. Eventually, she pulled back slightly, resting her forehead against mine. "We don't have to decide everything tonight," she whispered. "I just need to know you're here." I nodded. "I am." It was a promise, small but honest. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the window, rattling it softly. Weather always did that when things changed, as if the world needed to mark the moment somehow. She glanced at the window, then back at me. "It's getting late." I knew what she meant. Late didn't just mean time. It meant choice. She stood slowly, gathering her things. The letter stayed on the table. "I'll leave this here," she said, her voice steady but quiet. "Not for you to read. Just so you remember this night." She walked toward the door, and with every step, the distance between us grew heavier than it should have been. When she reached the door, she turned back, her hand resting on the handle. "This is the part where you either stop me," she said softly, "or let me walk away again." My heart pounded. I thought of the letter, the painting, the quiet night that had waited so patiently for us to finally be honest. I stepped forward. But I didn't speak yet. And in that suspended moment, between staying and leaving, between fear and truth, I realized chapter 3 wasn't about what we said. It was about what I was about to do. And whether I was brave enough to choose her before the door closed. I moved before I could overthink it. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just one step forward, then another, each one quieter than the fear pounding in my chest. She was still by the door, her hand resting on the handle, her back half turned toward me. That posture alone carried so much history, all the times she had waited for me to speak first, to choose first, to be braver than I had been. "Don't," I said. The word came out rough, almost breaking. She froze. Not pulling the door open. Not letting go of it either. Slowly, she turned around, her expression guarded in a way that hurt more than anger ever could. "Don't what?" she asked. "Don't walk away," I said. "Not tonight. Not like this." Silence stretched between us again, but this time it was sharp, demanding. She searched my face, not for affection, but for certainty. I realized then how many times I had given her feelings without direction, warmth without clarity. She needed more than that now. I took another step closer. The distance shrank until I could see the faint tension in her jaw, the way she pressed her lips together to keep from saying something too quickly. "I've let you walk away before," I continued. Every time, I told myself it was the right thing. That love meant not complicating your life. But all I did was teach myself how to miss you in silence. Her breath hitched, just slightly. "I'm tired of being careful," I said. "I'm tired of loving you halfway." That did it. Her hand slipped from the door handle, falling slowly to her side. It felt like the sound of something unlocking, not just the door, but something inside both of us. She walked toward me instead. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Determined. When she stopped in front of me, we stood close enough that I could feel the heat of her body, the quiet tremor running through her. I reached for her again, but this time I didn't ask with my eyes. I simply held her. She rested her forehead against my chest, breathing in deeply, like she needed to confirm I was real. I wrapped my arms around her fully now, not the tentative embrace from earlier, but something firmer. Protective. I was prepared to leave, she murmured into my shirt. I told myself I wouldn't look back this time. I know, I said. And I hate that I almost let you. We moved back to the couch together, our steps slow and synchronized, like we were afraid of breaking the spell if we rushed. She sat beside me again, but the space between us was gone now. She leaned into me naturally, her leg brushing mine, her head resting against my shoulder without hesitation. Outside, the wind grew stronger, pressing against the windows. Clouds passed over the moon, dimming the light briefly before letting it return. I noticed it without fully registering why, just another symbol of something shifting, something passing through. She picked up the letter from the table. "This isn't a goodbye letter," she said quietly. I realized that after I wrote it. I nodded. "Then what is it?" She unfolded it carefully, smoothing the creases with her thumb. She didn't hand it to me. Instead, she read aloud. Her voice was steady at first, then softer as the words deepened. "I love you in ways I don't talk about anymore. In habits. In silence. In the way I pause before telling anyone else about my day. I don't know if you'll ever choose me fully, but I need you to know, I have always been waiting." Each word landed like a confession I should have made myself. When she finished, she folded the letter again, her hands trembling slightly. "I kept waiting for you to choose," she said. And somewhere along the way, I stopped asking myself if I was allowed to want that. I took the letter from her then, holding it carefully, like something sacred. "I should have chosen you sooner," I said. "I was afraid of failing you." She looked at me, eyes glassy but strong. "You don't fail me by staying. You fail me by disappearing." That truth settled heavily, but it didn't crush me. It clarified something. I leaned in, pressing my forehead against hers again. "I'm here," I said. "And I don't want to keep loving you from a distance." Her hand slid up my arm, resting against my chest, right over my heart. "Then don't." The kiss that followed was different from the one before. Deeper. Slower. It carried the weight of what we'd almost lost. I tasted the salt of unshed tears, felt the tension ease from her shoulders as she relaxed into me. When we finally pulled apart, she laughed softly, an unguarded sound that felt like relief. "I didn't think it would feel this calm," she admitted. "Me neither," I said. "I thought choosing you would feel like jumping off a cliff." She smiled. "Maybe it is. But at least we're jumping together." We sat there for a while longer, talking in low voices, tracing patterns on each other's skin, letting the night deepen around us. The unfinished painting caught my eye again. "I think I know how to finish it now," I said suddenly. She followed my gaze. "How?" "By not being afraid of the empty spaces." She smiled, leaning her head back on my shoulder. "That sounds like us." Eventually, the clock on the wall chimed softly, reminding us how late it had become. The storm outside began to settle, rain tapping lightly against the glass now, gentle instead of restless. She looked up at me, searching my face again, but this time, her eyes weren't asking if I would stop her. They were asking what came next. "Stay," I said quietly. Not as a demand. As an invitation. She didn't answer right away. She just intertwined her fingers with mine again, squeezing gently. Outside, the rain continued, steady and patient. And as we sat there, holding hands in the quiet aftermath of almost losing each other, I understood something clearly for the first time. Love wasn't asking us to be fearless. It was asking us to stay. And whether she would stay tonight. That was the next choice waiting to be made. The night had settled into a gentle rhythm, our breaths, the soft hum of rain outside, the faint ticking of the clock. Words felt unnecessary now, like they might only shatter the fragile peace we'd found. So instead, we spoke through silence, through glances, and the subtle language of touch. She sat close beside me on the couch, her hands still intertwined with mine. I could feel the warmth radiating from her fingers, steady and sure, a quiet reassurance that we were both here, present in this moment. There was a softness in her eyes that made my chest ache, a tenderness that needed no explanation. I brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear, my fingers lingering on the curve of her cheek. Her skin was cool beneath my touch, but her eyes held a quiet fire. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into my hand, as if seeking comfort there. We didn't need to say, "I love you." Those words hung in the space between us, heavy and real. Instead, I kissed her palm gently, a promise whispered without sound. Her other hand found its way to my face, tracing the line of my jaw with a slow, deliberate touch. The world outside might have been dark and uncertain, but here, in this small cocoon of light and warmth, everything made sense. She smiled, that quiet smile that spoke of safety and trust. "I feel safe with you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I pulled her closer, resting my forehead against hers. Our breaths mingled, slow and steady, grounding us. The silence wasn't empty, it was full of everything we couldn't say, everything we dared to hope for. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The past regrets, the fears of the future, they all faded into the background. All that mattered was this shared heartbeat, this unspoken vow. I wanted to hold her here forever, to protect this fragile piece from the chaos of the world. But deep down, I knew love was never just about safety. It was about trust. And about choosing each other, again and again, even when words failed. As the rain tapped softly against the window, I whispered, "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." She smiled against me, eyes closed, and I knew then that sometimes, love didn't need words at all. It only needed us. The first light of dawn slipped quietly through the curtains, soft and golden, casting a warm glow across the room. It touched her face gently, her eyes still closed, her breathing slow and peaceful. For a moment, I just watched her, the weight of everything between us settling into something calm and unshakable. There was a sacredness to this morning, the kind that only comes after nights spent unraveling fears and weaving trust. I traced the curve of her cheek with a fingertip, marveling at how familiar she felt, how completely she had become home to me. She stirred, eyes fluttering open, catching the sunlight like it was a secret we both shared. When her gaze met mine, there was a softness there, a quiet certainty that no words could fully capture. "Good morning," she whispered, voice thick with sleep and something deeper. "Good morning," I replied, my heart swelling at the simple exchange. We lay there wrapped in a shared warmth, the world outside still waking up but somehow distant, as if time had folded around us. The fears, the doubts, the hesitations, they all felt miles away now, softened by the promise of this new day. She reached out, fingers intertwining with mine, holding tight. I squeezed back, feeling the steady pulse beneath her skin, a rhythm I wanted to carry with me forever. "I never thought love could feel this calm," she said, her voice barely above a breath. "It's not about the storm," I told her. "It's about the quiet after it." She smiled, resting her head on my chest, and I felt every heartbeat echo hers, a silent song of belonging. Outside, the sun rose higher, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. We didn't speak of the future yet, we didn't need to. This morning was enough, a beginning wrapped in the promise of forever. And in that peaceful light, I knew one thing clearly. This was love. Not loud, not perfect, but real. And it was ours to keep.